Let's celebrate a semester of accomplishments. Quick look is that we have gotten through 193 vocabulary words. That's almost half of them. 7 stories. That equals 407 total words of text. And you've gotten through 2/3 of the grammar book, 35 out of 50 grammar chapters. And a lot of those grammar chapters that are left in the textbook are actually what I consider to be intermediate grammar, not necessarily beginning grammar. I'll still touch on them, but just know that it's the benefit of being at an intermediate level, which will be impressive. My method focuses a lot on reading fluency, so we've gotten through a lot of text in one semester. It's the equivalence of what I got in my entire first year of Hebrew. At the end of the year, when we finally got into extended passages, it was only 3 passages, and it's not too much more than what you've already read this semester. Much of the rest of this will be me going over the grammar points, and the reason is to show you that the language fog has been passing. Language fog being the metaphor that when you're learning something new, it doesn't seem clear, it's hazy. And the unfortunate thing is that the language fog follows you as you continue to learn new concepts in the language, and if you don't take time to look back and see how much you've learned and what's clear, it can be discouraging because the new thing always seems to be hazy. But let me help you by looking back to see all the grammar that we've learned, and my bet is that most of it will be surprisingly clear. So I hope this is really encouraging. So we've looked at the Hebrew writing system, orthography. I've focused on the consonants. I haven't focused too much on the vowels. At least recently I gave you a vowel chart, and I told you it's not so important whether or not a particular vowel is long or short, whether the A vowel is a kametz or a patach, but it is really important to know the vowel system so that you can pronounce the word. And it's really important as well that you know whether or not the vowel is a kametz versus a schwa. If the vowel has reduced to a schwa, that has meaning difference almost always. We've looked at the schwa, or what I have written schwa. And then we've also looked at the dagesh, that dot in the word. And the dagesh can mean 2 different things. One, it can be the call, a light dagesh, which just marks the phonological pronunciation variation for the begad kafat letters. If it lacks the dagesh, then you have an extended pronunciation of the letter for 3 letters. V for the bait, Ch for the kaf, and F for the pay. And if it has a dagesh, then it just has a momentary pronunciation, a hard pronunciation. B for bait, K for kaf, P for pay. The other 3 just have the hard pronunciation no matter if it has dagesh or not. G for gimel, D for dalet, T for tav. But there's another dagesh, chazak, strong, and that's a doubling dagesh, meaning that whatever letter the dagesh is in, it counts for 2 of those letters. And you can tell which dagesh it is by looking at the previous vowel. If right before the letter with the dagesh, if it is a vowel, then it is a dagesh chazak, the doubling dagesh. But if that letter stands at the beginning of a word, or if it follows a schwa, then it is the dagesh call. So if it follows a vowel, it's a dagesh chazak. If not, it's a dagesh kal. We've looked at nouns, and we've seen that each noun has inherent gender, right? Cherev, sword, is feminine, whereas basar, meat, is masculine. And these nouns inflect for singular, dual, and plural. Not all of the words inflect for dual, but many of them, especially if they're paired body parts, they will have a dual ending. So the masculine noun ish, singular, anashim, plural. Safa is a feminine noun. In its plural form, it's sefatot. In its dual form, it's sefatime. I have a mistake there. I thought I fixed it. So it's not siftot for the plural, but it's sefatot for the plural. Sefatime is a dual form. Safa is the singular form, and that's a feminine noun. Noun inflection is often irregular, however. Av is a masculine noun. The plural is avot. Sadeh is a masculine noun. The plural is sadot. Isha is a feminine noun, but the plural is nashim. Cherev is a feminine noun, but you can't tell it in the singular. In the plural, it is charavot. Kiseh is a masculine noun, but the plural is kisot. Adjectives inflect for gender and number. So the one adjective can be masculine or feminine, unlike nouns. So gadol, gedolah, gedolim, gedolot. If the adjective is an attributive adjective, it describes a noun, then it agrees with that noun in gender and number and definiteness. So cherev, even though it doesn't look like a feminine noun, is a feminine noun. So the adjective takes the feminine form. Cherev gedolah, a big sword. But if the noun is a definite noun, then the adjective also takes the article. Ha'ish, hatov is the good man. Now, if the adjective predicates some quality of another noun, then the noun will always be definite and the adjective will be indefinite. So now you're going to have a mismatch in definiteness. So the man is good is ha'ish tov. Ha'ish hatov is the good man. Ha'ish tov is the man is good. And the way I've always remembered it is you kind of follow the phrase along, ha'ish, so you got to say the man. And if it lacks the article, then you just substitute the word is. The man is good. Ha'ish tov. We've also looked at the article and the interrogative. So the article ha and the interrogative ha can often look identical. So many times it's just context that's going to tell you one way or the other. For the article, if it's with a word that has a prefix preposition, ba or la, the preposition swallows the hey of the article, and you can only tell there is an article by the residual vowel. So be sade is in a field, ba sade is in the field. But the conjunction vav does not swallow up the article at all. So it's ve ha-isha, not va-isha. So you're always going to see the hey of the article with the conjunction vav. It won't swallow it up like the prefix prepositions do. Hebrew does not have a to be verb in the present tense. That means all copular clauses that are the is and are statements don't have a verb at all. So Yishai Tov means Jesse is good. Jesse is a teacher is Yishai Hu More. So if you have this is statement and you state a quality about a person with an adjective, you can just have the adjective follow the person, Yishai Tov. But if you say this noun is that noun, then you need to put in the pronoun. Yishai Hu More. Jesse he is a teacher would just be translated Jesse is a teacher. And you need to put in the pronoun who, because if you lack it with these two nouns side by side, like I said last night, it could either be a smichut or it could be apposition. So either it could be the Jesse of the teacher, which would make no sense, but what could make sense is Jesse the teacher. But if you want to make a statement, Jesse is the teacher, then you need to put in the pronoun who. And we've also seen that the present tense is used with participles. The participle doesn't equal the present tense, but the participle can act as the present tense. Yishai Yoshev al Kiseh, Jesse is sitting on a chair. And we've seen that there's two different negation words, ein and lo, and they negate different things. Ein negates copular clauses and participle statements, so I'll just negate the ones from last slide. Jesse is not good is ein yishai tov. Jesse is not a teacher is ein yishai more. Jesse is not sitting on a chair is ein yishai yoshev al kiseh. Ein in these statements will usually be clause initial, but it could be switched around. You could say yishai ein yoshev al kiseh. Now lo will negate Qatal and Yiqtol statements. So Jesse did not sit on a chair is yishai lo yashav al kiseh. Jesse will not sit on a chair is yishai lo yeshev al kiseh. And Hebrew does not have a to have verb, meaning I have a sheep, I have a sword. Hebrew has to use an indirect construction. There is to me a sheep. There is to me a sword. And so if you have a statement about the present tense, you could either say yesh li cherev, there is to me a sword, or you could just say li cherev, to me is a sword, meaning I have a sword. You don't need the yesh to make the statement. But if you make a statement about the past or the future, you need the to be verb haya. And the haya verb agrees with the object because this is an indirect statement. So hayta li cherev is there was to me a sword, meaning I had a sword. Yihiyu li charavot, there will be to me swords, meaning I will have swords. We've also spent two whole handouts looking at smichut and pronouns. Smichut is a binding of two nouns to express an of relationship. Beit HaMelech is the house of the king, or you could also say the king's house. So many times that possessive construction, apostrophe S, you could just use a smichut. We've also looked at pronouns, and I had a whole handout. You can have independent word pronouns, ani, ata, at, hu, he, etc. These are always subject pronouns. You can also attach pronouns to nouns. Shmi is my name. Prepositions, li is to me. Infinitives, hayotcha, you to be something, and then verbs, anahu, he answered him. I won't go into it anymore because I just gave you a whole handout on that a couple weeks ago. We've also looked at the Qatal conjugation. Qatal almost always is used solely for just making simple past tense statements. And the Qatal conjugation is marked by the prefixes at the end telling you who did it. So, ani halachti, at the end it tells you who did it. The T ending means I did it. There are two categories of weak verbs for the Qatal. So, halachti would be your default pattern, your strong pattern, but then there's a couple weak patterns. Second vav verbs are also often called hollow verbs or biconsonantal verbs, and kam is an example of one of these words. And then what we had talked about a little bit last night is a different kind of weak verb called third yod, asa. Now, why do I call them third yod? Is because these verbs deviate from the a vowel pattern. So you have ha lachti, ha lachta, ha lacht, ha lach, right? You have an a vowel pattern. But when you inflect a sa in the Qatal, you get a different vowel pattern. You get asiti, asita. So you have a chirik yod. And why does it go to chirik yod? Probably because the underlying consonant is a yod. You never see the consonant yod. It's part of a vowel letter, asiti, chirik yod. But the very reason that it becomes a chirik is probably because it's a third yod. People call these third hey verbs because what often happens in the lexical form, asa, and what always pretty much happens in the Yiqtol conjugation is that the yod of the root drops out, and then what happens is that there's a different ending attached, kametz hey. So because kametz hey is what often is realized, people just call these third hey verbs, even though once again, this is not a hey of the root, it's not a consonantal hey, it's a vowel letter hey. So it doesn't really matter what you call it. I'm fine if you call it third hey, I'm fine if you call it third yod, but whatever we call it, there's this certain class of verbs that always inflect the same. And you derive the participle from the Qatal verb. So for strong verbs like halach, you overwrite the flashcard form with the OA vowel pattern. So instead of halach, you say holech. And there you go. There's your masculine singular participle. He is walking, or I am walking, or you are walking. And in order to inflect it, then you can just add the adjective endings. Holechet, holchim, holchot. Now, the feminine singular holechet, it's not holcha, but it's close. The im and the ot endings are the adjective endings. Now, the second vav verbs, all you have to do is add the adjective endings to the flashcard form. There's just one step. So kam could be he got up or he is getting up. It's the same, the Qatal form is the same as the participle form. Kam, and then to inflect it, you just add the adjective endings. Kama, kamim, kamot. For the third yod verbs, you do the same step as the strong verbs. You overwrite the flashcard form, so asa becomes ose, and then number 2, you replace the verbal endings with adjective endings. Ose, osa, osim, osot. And we've also looked at the Yiqtol conjugation, and whereas the Qatal conjugation only has 2 categories of weak verbs, the Yiqtol conjugation has the strong, what you would expect, default pattern, and it has 4 categories of weak verbs. So you have second vav, which we've looked at, kam, yakum. It's weak in both the Qatal and the Yiqtol. Third yod, asa, yaase, or what I have here, yivne for the Yiqtol, is weak in the Qatal and in the Yiqtol. But there's several verbs that are strong in the Qatal, like yashav is strong in the Qatal, but it's weak in the Yiqtol because it's a first yod verb. There's another category that are strong in the Qatal, weak in the Yiqtol, and these are first nun verbs. And we will start out second semester with the first week of the semester will be about the first yod Yiqtol verbs like yeshev, and the second week we will look at the first nun verb. So we'll have a story with all of these kinds of verbs, and then I'll have a verb chart explaining the consistent change that these verbs do in the Yiqtol conjugation. And I've had you memorize the Qatal and the Yiqtol because from the Qatal, because if you memorize these two forms, you can derive any kind of verbal form from these two forms, right? The participle is derived from the Qatal, and any other verbal form is derived from the Yiqtol. I've talked about how the infinitive is derived from the Yiqtol. So for strong verbs, all you have to do is remove the prefix from the flashcard form. So yishmor is he will guard, and that becomes shemor. So you take off the yod prefix, and voila, there is your infinitive to guard. And that's just the bare infinitive. But as you've seen so far, usually the infinitive has the lamed prefix. In fact, you haven't seen an infinitive in a story in its bare form. It always has the lamed prefix. And in that case, you can just take yishmor and then replace the prefix yod with a prefix lamed, right? Yishmor, he will guard, lishmor, to guard. Now, I've talked about Yiqtol verbs where you would have a O vowel, you have an A type vowel. So instead of yishmor, yimtza. Here you have two steps to derive the infinitive. One, you remove the prefix from the flashcard form. Two, you overwrite the A type vowel with a cholam. So yimtza, he will find, becomes metzo or limtzo. So the infinitive has this kind of uh-oh pattern, metzo, where there was an A-type vowel for the Yiqtol. For certain words, you always have an O-type vowel in the infinitive. Now let's look at the weak verbs that you have. For second vav verbs, you only have one step. Just remove the prefix flashcard form. So yakum becomes kum. Or if you have a lamed prefix, it becomes lakum, to get up. Third yod verbs, these have two steps. So one, remove the prefix from the flashcard form, yivne. But then two, you have to replace the ending with ot. So yivne becomes benot or livnot. And all third hey verbs in the infinitive form end in, or I said third hey, third yod. See, I go both ways. Replace the ending with ot. So what's the commonality here? The commonality is that you have to, for all of these, you remove the prefix from the flashcard Yiqtol form. If you have a strong verb, what you're left with just is your infinitive. For Yiqtol, you have to overwrite the vowel with o, so metzo. For second vav verbs, you remove the prefix, there's your infinitive. For third yod verbs, you remove the prefix, but then you have to replace the ending with ot. And then we've also looked about how you derive the imperative from the Yiqtol. And similarly, you remove the prefix from the second person forms. And maybe you have to adjust the residual vowels. So tishmor, if you want to command somebody to guard, you just say shemor. And shemor, if you were to see that form, it could be ambiguous between the imperative and the infinitive. Many times the masculine singular imperative is identical to the infinitive. And context will tell you what it is. But usually the infinitive will have the lamed preposition. So usually it's not ambiguous. If you're understanding the context, you'll understand the sense of the word. Sometimes you'll have to adjust the residual initial vowels, like the feminine singular, the at form becomes shimri, the atem form becomes shimru, and the aten form is just what it is, shemorna. Exactly. You don't have to adjust anything. Let's look at Yiqtol. Metzah is the ata form. So here, the imperative is different from the infinitive. The infinitive will overwrite this kind of word with an O-type vowel. So metzo would be the infinitive, metzah would be the imperative. The at form, you adjust the initial vowels, mitzi. The atem form, you adjust the initial vowels, mitzu. The aten form, you don't have to do anything, metzena is the form. Second vav, here actually you only have to remove the prefix from the second person forms. Kum, kumi, kumu, komna. You don't have to do anything else. That is the imperative. Derive from third yod verbs. Once again, all you have to do is remove the prefix from the second person forms. Shte, shti, shtu, shtena. That is the imperative form. And this is just going back to showing how much text you've gotten first semester. So 407 total words this semester, but look how that is compared to next semester. Next semester is over 3 times the amount. So 407 to 1,472. And the reason is because we spent half of last semester not reading a single story. The first 7 weeks, you never read a single story. The last 7 weeks, you read a story each week. And the other reason is because the story started out so small. And now you can start out, instead of like a 37-word story, you start out with an 87-word story. The other reason is that first semester focuses so much on grammar. So first semester is mainly grammar, and it's all the hard stuff. Second semester will in some ways seem a lot easier because there will hardly be any new grammar. You've already learned most of the new grammar. I'll still give you grammar, but the grammar will just be review grammar, like I've done with the handout on the attached pronouns and the smichut. It'll be a review, and it'll just be, hey, look how much you've learned. And I'll give you dozens of examples of how you've learned in the story, and then hopefully it will all come together. So next semester will hardly be any new grammar. It'll still be grammar, but it'll be review grammar to be able to cement it. And it will give you lots and lots of text to be able to continue building up your reading fluency, because as I told you in class yesterday, you will only continue with reading if you get to some point of ease, if you get to some point of enjoyment. And that can only happen if you are taken through a lot of text. So I'm trying to get you through as much text as possible. And so this is just an overview of what I'm giving you compared to what I was given as a student. So the blue line is our class, the green line is when I was a student. So by halfway through the semester, we continued our trajectory for reading fluency. And after one semester, you've got almost 500 words of text. But this trajectory, as I explained with the snowball analogy, because it's a reading fluency, because it's an oral inductive immersion approach, it has this sticky nature to it. So it should be easier to be able to keep adding words next semester, so that we can just read. And so by the end of next semester, you'll have almost 2,000 words of total text, which is really, really cool. And I pray that you will be blessed as you review your vocab over Christmas break, and next semester as we hit the ground running to be able to go deeper and deeper into God's Word. It will be a blessing to be able to continue on with you.